Good morning, everyone. Looks like attendees are still filing in, but we are making some good progress. I think we've got the presentation coming up, and we will kick off here in just a minute. All right. Thank you. Slides are ready to go. Okay, let's go ahead and get kicked off. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is our third and final webinar for the SCTEM Winter Webinar Series, and we are speaking today. The title of the session is named Expense Sense, Tools That Talk Your Language. And what we're going to be talking about are different ways to support your auditing activities for travel and expense. So we'll move into introducing the presenters for today. I am Elizabeth Downs. I am with Clay Downs Consulting, and many of you have met me in another capacity, but wonderful to be here. Things have evolved for me lately, so tickled to be presenting with you today. We also have Ashley Bumgarner, who is with the University of Alabama, and she will be presenting in partnership with Jordan Ireland at AppZen. University of Alabama uses AppZen, and will be talking to us about that today. And also Danae Polemy. She is with the University of Virginia, and she is presenting in partnership with Doug Hensley, who is with Card Integrity. So welcome to all of our presenters. Thank you so much for taking time to come and share your knowledge, wisdom, information, and experience with us today. Okay, we're going to get into the heart of the matter. The overview of what we're going to talk about today is, as I said, audit tools and leveraging AI, right? They're a hot topic, and we're bringing this expert knowledge coupled with some real world experience to you today. You'll hear from University of Alabama, University of Virginia, and their partners, AppZen and Card Integrity, respectively. So for the schools, they're going to share with us what systems and tools they're using to process and audit expense reports and how that process works for them and what benefits they're getting out of it. And then the suppliers are going to share with us some of what other schools that they work with might be doing and other features and functions that may be available. And then, of course, we welcome your Q&A at the end of the presenting portion of today's webinar. So let's get started. And I believe it is Ashley who is going to kick us off and talk about the University of Alabama.
Hi, really glad to be here today. My name is Ashley Bumgardner. I serve as the manager of purchasing card services at the University of Alabama. I've been part of the UA community for 6 years now and in this role for a year and a half. So I lead our P card services team. Before stepping into this role, I spent time working in 2 different academic departments, which gave me a great foundation for understanding how our campus operates and what our faculty and staff need from us. In P card services, my team is responsible for final review of all expense reports and invoices. So if it comes through the system, chances are we see it and probably more than once. To give you a sense of the scale that we're working with, at UA, we have over 9,000 faculty and staff, and we process student and guest reimbursements through Concur. Each year, our department audits roughly 63,788 expense reports, which together contain more than 302,000 individual line items. And yes, we audit 100% of them. So our annual spend, we spend $117 million on the P card and 5.5 million in reimbursements for a combined total of 122.5 million. And while reimbursements don't run through AppZen, everything else does. Our current ERP is Banner, but we are preparing for a major transition to Workday with a go live date of February 1st, 2028. On the travel side, we partner with Christofferson Business Travel, and we use Concur for both booking and expense tools. Of course, AppZen is our audit partner. Because we audit every single report, we needed a tool that could help us manage the smaller repetitive transactions that take up so much time. So those things like per diem, mileage, and then low dollar purchases. These are important, but they're also the kinds of audit items that bog us down with the manual audit process. We first met with AppZen in December 2020, and by March 2021, we had completed implementation. So one of the things that impressed us early on was how well AppZen integrated with our existing structure. They were able to incorporate our account codes, amount thresholds, and expense types directly into the system. So originally, AppZen was embedded within Concur, and when the two systems split, we made the decision to keep AppZen. And that decision was easy for us because it was already fully implemented and performing exactly the way that we needed and expected it to. So a few of the audit models that are the most valuable for us are the duplicate across reports. This model, it's been a game changer for our auditing process because it identifies transactions that might have been submitted twice. So for example, the first time it was submitted as a reimbursement and then later came through as an actual P card charge. So before AppZen, we didn't have a reliable way to catch these, but now the system will flag the second report, and then we can research that to make sure if it needed to be reimbursed, that we reimburse it accordingly, or if it comes through as a P card charge, that we seek reimbursement from the cardholder. And then another one we use is unauthorized expenses. And this model looks for keywords associated with expenses that may require special handling or are not allowed. Things like alcohol, tattoos, babysitting, or missing receipt affidavits. When AppZen finds these keywords, the report is automatically routed to our manual audit queue. And from there, we can verify that the correct fund number was used or send the report back to the cardholder for correction as needed. We also like the amount verification by expense type model. And this feature allows us to set thresholds for specific account codes. So if an expense exceeds the threshold, it's automatically flagged for manual review. A good example of how we use this one is our threshold for clothing and uniforms is set to 0. And that means that every report coded to that category comes straight to us. We can review it to make sure that they have all the approvals, all the documentation needed for that purchase before it moves through the approval process. If something's missing, we can reject the report with clear comments about what needs to be corrected, and then they can resubmit it once we have the correct documentation. And the last thing I'll touch on is the merchant blacklist check. This model lets us flag certain vendors so that every transaction from that merchant is reviewed manually. And our blacklist includes vendors like eBay, PayPal, Square, and Venmo. These platforms where additional scrutiny is often necessary, and AppZen helps us ensure that nothing is slipping through the cracks. And then another thing that we really like about AppZen is their customer service. It's exceeded all of our expectations. We submit tickets directly through the system, or we can reach out to the representative by phone. We also have quarterly cadence meetings where we review updates, discuss new features, and explore tools that might benefit us. And one thing that we really appreciate here at UA is their transparency. If there's an issue with the system, an outage with the system for whatever reason, they notify us right away by email. Then they also follow up with status updates of when the issue will be resolved. And then they actually email once it is completely resolved. And that makes a big difference for us because we're managing such a high volume auditing. So overall, AppZen has allowed us to maintain our commitment to auditing 100% of the reports while freeing up time to focus on the transactions that truly require human judgment. It's strengthened our internal controls, improved our efficiency, and given us confidence that we're catching issues that we weren't able to before.
Thank you so much, Ashley. We actually have a number of questions that have come in for you while you're chatting. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe address a few of those. The first one was, has it been a challenge toggling between AppZen and Concur when you're auditing?
No, not for us. It's not. When we are in AppZen, it pulls up everything that we need to see within the report. So we actually don't go back and forth between AppZen and Concur much at all because it pulls everything that we need to see.
Where is that step set up in your workflow to
What?
go to AppZen for review?
So AppZen is the first step.
Right after the user submits a report.
So they submit the report, it goes through AppZen for the automated review. And then if, according to our controls, what we've set up in the implementation process, if it catches any of those key items, then it will toss it to manual audit, where one of our auditors will look at it.
Great. And then, hi, Charlene Williams. She had a question about, is the merchant blacklist that you mentioned here done with the credit card company, like you would block MCC codes, or is this unique to AppZen?
So this is what we set up during implementation. Jordan may can answer that better than I can. I only know that what the vendors that we wanted set up on the blacklist.
Yeah, that's my experience as well. I believe this blacklist, and Jordan, you can answer this when you jump in, but I believe it's specific to AppZen and that technology and programming that you can put in there with them. Liam asked us if you could speak to the time investment in getting it in place, basically the implementation timeline, configuring it to your policy, and the AI learning your standards.
So it took us 3 months from start to finish with the implementation.
That is not a long time in the world of higher ed. Great. Yeah, that goes pretty quick. And then one more. Thanks, William. Does the merchant blacklist feature block third-party booking sites?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And yeah,
Jordan, can you expand on that?
So we're going to click forward. We're going to move over to Jordan, and maybe you can help us with a couple of those as well as speaking to your information.
Yeah, so pleasure to meet all of you today. Jordan Ireland with AppZen. Real pleasure to speak with the audience today. To that particular question, I know that we're able to update our blacklisted merchants specific to customers. For third-party booking tools, I think that we're able to do that. We also have a number of other audit models that add in additional layers. So that's certainly something that we could handle. If there's a particular need that your school has, I would just maybe encourage you to reach out, and we'd be happy to maybe learn a little bit more about what particular tool or site you're looking for travelers to not use. But anyway, you know, real honor to speak with the group here today. Just a little bit about AppZen in general. We really help finance and travel teams, really the essential back office staff, really just reduce their manual audit work, and that is applied with multiple spend controls in place. We've been around since about 2017 with our platform, and it's really focused. It's specific for expense audit, for AP inbox, invoice capture, and the invoice review and fraud detection. And it includes, real-time policy compliance, and there's additional layers of intelligence and analytics and dashboards so you can measure your efficiency gains. That would probably be one of the main benefits there. But in a nutshell, 100% of expenses and invoices, they're going to be audited automatically before any payments posted. So that's I would say one of the primary benefit for a higher ed school why they wouldn't want to use us. Elizabeth, if you can maybe go to the following slide, I'd like to share a little bit more about our platform. So it has more context for the team here. This is just a real high level overview on our AI first platform. So like I mentioned before, expense audit. We also have our card audit. So if you have any P cards or corporate cards or any of that kind of card spend as well, similar to what we're doing, what Elizabeth or what Ashley had mentioned on the expense side, we can also extend that to cards. We also have our AppZen inbox, so we can streamline responding to vendors. So if your team is ever, faces challenges with managing multiple vendors or multiple AP inboxes, we also have a system that can automate and streamline that. And then, of course, our autonomous AP suite is the invoice capture and invoice review. And regardless of whichever product, it's wrapped with our mastermind AI. So really what this allows us to do is read and interpret receipts, invoices, etc., kind of like a human would. The benefit to you as a higher ed team is that you get a very realistic, very adept, very flexible AI tool that really interprets documents like a human would, like a digital coworker on your audit team, that can classify that spend, that can automate that review for you, and can call out any potential fraud or anomalies that it sees within your expense or invoice program. And it's very flexible. So if you have particular workflows that you may need, we can take those into account. And in terms of where we're seeing a lot of higher ed organizations go, we support multiple universities and colleges across the country. But what we're starting to see more and more of them leverage is really leaning into AI agents. And this is sort of, a new capability that's come onto the market recently. And what I would say the primary benefit to you as, someone who's managing your university or college's travel program is really that it allows you to put a tool in place that can then take further action. So our audit models are very good at calling out anything that it sees wrong, anything that's high risk. And our agents can act as a digital extension of your team. So it can actually take action on anything that our tools call out. So really just, CFOs and finance leaders are really focused on, kind of doing more with less, or leveraging AI to help the team scale. This is really where AI agents can kind of come in and help out. So if there's any particular questions or anything that you guys would like to learn more about, I would encourage you to reach out to someone at AppZen. Would be happy to maybe answer or address any questions that you might have related to your particular program.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And speaking to that offer, as you will notice in this deck, which will also be published on the SCTEM site, there are QR codes and contact information for you to reach the folks that are speaking with us today, either for follow-up with schools and or our suppliers. We had an outstanding question, Ashley, that came up that I think maybe is reiterated in a few different ways. So people are super curious about this. How many staff members do you currently have supporting your T&E program? Was the first
So
one.
all of our entire accounts payable department is 13 people, and that includes managers, directors. That's all of us, auditors.
So they're kind of like primary, secondary, tertiary teams, or is it really just everybody kind of participates in some way, shape, or form?
So everybody, all 9 of us participate because four of them are 1099 and vendor stuff. So they don't audit at all. So 9 of us.
Okay. And did you experience a reduction of support staff that followed the
We did
implementation?
not. We did not. We run on a very small staff anyway, so no, we haven't reduced staff.
Okay, that sounds good. And I did want to respond to that question around booking third-party tools. So the question was, can it block third-party tool booking sites? What we're doing here is auditing expense reports, right? So we're auditing the expense after it's been incurred. So from my experience, right, in the life cycle of what we're doing in travel and expense, someone has booked outside of the tool. What you can do is certainly highlight that this receipt from this expense was booked by someone other than your booking site or your travel management company, whatever is, you're looking for there in terms of identifying anything that is not this. But it couldn't block the booking because the activity that we're doing here is in the auditing of expense reports. That would be my understanding of how it functions and operates. A lot of robustness in what it can find, see, highlight for you, and make sure you're able to audit it, but it can't get upstream and mess with the booking capabilities. Um, Wonderful. Please feel free to we've got some good questions coming in, but for anyone who doesn't know, please feel free to use the chat feature to continue to give us some questions and find out more about what you want to know today. So thank you so much, Ashley and Jordan. We're going to step forward into talking about another tool and process that is utilized by the University of Virginia, card integrity. So Danae, welcome, and let's get into what you use.
Thanks, Liz. And it's great to be here this afternoon with everybody. My name is Danae Palemi. I am the expense operations manager at UVA. Have been here for over 5 years and oversee the travel and expense team. But for the purposes of today, really focusing on our expense and card monitoring program, which we partner with Card Integrity on. So to give a little bit of background information on our program and volume that we experience, we have approximately 10,000 faculty and staff. We have student and guest reimbursements that come through, but those are processed through a separate process. And then our volume of expense reports, and I'll go into a little bit more detail of how these are processed, but can see listed there about 75% of the spend that's processed is on the card, and 25% is reimbursements. The way our business process works for expense reports a little bit different. We do not audit 100% of those expense reports in advance. However, all expense reports are approved by at least 2 approvers at the departmental level and are trained approvers that hold a security role and approval role to do that. And then we have specific expense reports based on logic that we use and have set up that route to our team centrally for review. Our ERP is Workday. So all expense reports are going through Workday right now. Our travel agency is also Christofferson Business Travel, and our booking tool is Concur. And then, of course, we partner with Card Integrity, and I'll dive into a little bit more of those details as well. So to start off with, just to give a high level overview of all the different tools that we use for auditing. We on the front end use validations in Workday to have controls and prevent expense reports or reimbursements for things that don't align with policy. So these can be things like being reimbursed for travel in advance of the travel dates, certain things that are not allowed for reimbursement may be restricted, like capital equipment. So we have those hard validations that are in place on expense reports to prevent those from going through. We also have, as I'm sure many of you, receipt requirements and other validations as well in terms of looking for duplicate expenses on the front end as much as we can, not allowing people to spend money on a travel meal if they're requesting per diems and things like that. So a lot of that, as much as we can, is set up in Workday on the front end. In addition to that, we have some of those high risk transactions route to us and the travel and expense team for review and approval for us to manually review. Those are typically things like anything that might be taxable, gifts to employees or non-employees, capital equipment. And then we also review any reimbursements that are over a certain dollar threshold to ensure that we have more oversight on those and can review those in more detail. So in addition to that, of the 113 million that goes through all of those expense reports, we're not able to review all of that. And that is where our partnership with Card Integrity really comes into play and is very critical. And they're able to help us do a much more in-depth and strategic review of those expense reports. So we began our partnership with Card Integrity in 2024 and are continuing to develop that relationship and our monitoring program with them and continuing to enhance that. So very excited to be able to continue partnering with them and continuing to improve upon what we've already built as a solid foundation for our monitoring program. To dive into a little bit more detail on how we're set up with Card Integrity, we currently monitor based on 4 main categories. The first is duplicate transactions, and this covers us from looking at 2 potential reimbursements that are duplicates, or a reimbursement and a card transaction that may be a duplicate. And to do this, they review based on the date, the total amount, and then are looking within a 365-day window. So even though we do have a validation set up on the front end in Workday, we are still identifying additional duplicate transactions that are coming through on our monthly report from Card Integrity, and see anything from 2 reimbursements to somebody that thought that they had paid out of pocket and they accidentally submitted as a reimbursement and then a month later submit the card transaction. We've had situations where maybe a delegate submits a report on behalf of somebody else and then the actual payee submits it as well. So a lot of this overlap is able to be identified by Card Integrity, and they raise that up to us for further review. And then we're able to dig in a little bit more and determine if it is a true duplicate or not. The second area that we review are restricted vendors and items. And this is anything from capital equipment, other items that are required to be purchased on a PO, as well as more travel-related policy items like Airbnb and things like that that we have restricted on the card. The third area is split transactions. This is purchases that are split into multiple transactions in order for the cardholder potentially to bypass their spending limit. Many times this is done unintentionally. It might be the vendor who actually splits the charge in order to get it to go through. So that's something that we monitor in terms of our policy, and use this as an educational point to let people know what the best practices for encountering those types of transactions where it may be over their current spending limit. And the last area that we monitor currently is for personal purchases. And those are flagging anything from clothing stores, jewelry, car washes. We have a whole list of items that we've worked with Card Integrity to develop. And that's really something that's customizable, which I think is something to highlight here, is that we can customize how we review these and what we're flagging. And Card Integrity is happy to provide their expertise on how best to do that. But we really have a lot of flexibility into what we're looking at. So a good example here is we flag recreational items. And as we were initially starting to set this up, we found those were getting flagged a lot. And most of that was coming from athletics, which is completely understandable. So now we've been able to modify that a little bit and set specific flags even to differentiate between different departments. So we don't flag athletics the same way we may flag another department, and really customizing that because we understand that the spending behavior is different depending on which department is making the purchase. So it's really been really helpful to be able to customize that so much, and even to break out some of the things like makeup and clothing that's purchased, which may seem unusual, but if it's for the drama department, we know that is a valid business purpose that they have for making that purchase. So we really have been working on customizing that further. In addition to those main categories that we're currently reviewing, we're also continuing to work on enhancements to this. And that's where I think this is very exciting, is that we're continuing to enhance the process. In terms of the personal purchases, we have started looking into and reviewing Card Integrity's machine learning and AI that identifies trends over time to really help us review those personal purchases, which can be, they can add up, those flags can add up, and we've been trying to refine those. And this new tool allows us to identify which transactions are common for a specific payee or a specific department to make versus which are divergent. So it's actually reviewing over time a specific cardholder's spending habits, and will identify for us based on the sensitivity scale which transactions are more likely to be divergent and therefore potentially a personal purchase, so that we can really focus in and hone in on those more on our review. So that's been very helpful for us to be able to know which transactions to focus on. And so we're continuing to develop that. And that again is kind of the same approach, where there is a sensitivity scale that we're able to customize and partner with Card Integrity on to determine what is the right sensitivity for us. And how do we want to approach that for the athletics department versus maybe the business school. So there's different behaviors for each of those. And that's what's really great about this tool, is it takes that into account. It takes into account their specific spending behavior based on each person. One of the other enhancements that we're working on is that Card Integrity is very open to looking into new ways to audit, new categories to audit. So we've also been working on setting up a sales tax report, because as a state entity, the University of Virginia is exempt from paying sales tax in the state of Virginia. And so we are starting to monitor for that, looking at who is paying sales tax on their card and really using this as an educational tool to let people know what they can do and to help avoid paying that sales tax. We know in all cases, depending on if you're going to the coffee shop down the street that may be locally owned, it may be not realistic to have that sales tax taken off, but educating as much as possible to ensure that we are taking advantage of that and giving that information back to departments as well. As a side note as well, they also help us to monitor our aging transactions. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well in terms of how long it's taking people to expense their card transactions. They help us monitor that in a separate report. So to give kind of a bigger overview of what the process looks like, we've given card integrity the criteria we'd like to use to identify these transactions in this report. And then we send them our data monthly. They do work their magic on their side and create a report for us, and with those flags and things that we've asked them to use to identify those potential transactions, and they send us that report on a monthly basis. That's in an Excel spreadsheet. We have a different tab for each category that we review, so we're able to kind of differentiate between which specific category we're reviewing, whether that's restricted vendors and items or the possibly personal purchases. And we then are able to dive in and review those in more detail. At times, we do have to reach out to the specific employee or department and get more information from them to verify if it is something that is a non-compliant transaction. And from there, we are able to mark those transactions as pass or fail and send that back to card integrity. What's really great and helpful from here is that card integrity then tracks that over time. So we're able to keep track of each employee, how many violations that they've had over the course of time. And so every month when we get a new report from them, we have a list of those people, how many violations they've had, and those continue to be tracked on a rolling six-month basis, which is what we're using based on our current chart that we've published and maintain. And so we have our communications set up based on that, but multiple violations eventually result in notification to the cardholder supervisor, and eventually they may result in the card being suspended or canceled. So really using this as an educational tool, I think, to start, and it's been really helpful for us in being able to see and analyze more what the spend habits are of each department, because we aren't seeing all of those expense reports come through, and we're not auditing 100% of those on the front end. So from an educational standpoint, this has been huge. We've also identified over 100 duplicate transactions. Since we started our partnership with Card Integrity, we've recovered $19,000 just in duplicate transactions. And really been able to track the misuse over time, which is big, because we were previously tracking misuse, but it wasn't something that was necessarily able to be tracked and monitored centrally in a concrete place. So that has been really helpful for us to have that managed by Card Integrity, and really identifying some of those issues that we weren't previously aware of. Even down to small little things like people thinking that there were maybe certain things that it was okay to put on their card. And we've been able to now partner with the departments and have more of those conversations to help them better align on what the correct purchasing method should be. So it's just been really a pleasure working with Card Integrity, and being able to continue work with them to enhance the program, and really excited to see what we continue building and enhancing from here.
Thank you so much, Danae. I have a follow-up question for you. So in terms of that 19,000 in duplicate transaction recovery, because this process works, really after the fact, right? They've put a card charge through, if I'm understanding correctly, then maybe they've put it through as a reimbursement and have received reimbursement for it, probably not intentionally most of the time. So you're going back out to departments, you're asking them to repay you. How are employees responding to that? Sounds like fairly well.
Yeah, I think most people are very understanding and respond to us, and maybe confused at first, and because they don't realize that it was an accidental reimbursement that they made twice. So we have all of that great documentation, in the report we get from Card Integrity shows both reports, both expense report numbers. We can see exactly when they did it, and a lot can be explained from that. So we are able to provide that to the departments, and of course they're I think really grateful to be able to see that something went through and able to learn from that too. So in the situations where it maybe was a delegate who submitted it and the payees also submitted the same thing, that's a good learning point from them as well in terms of their processes, and also just making sure that they are aware of knowing how to go back into their expense reports to view what they may have already submitted, what the current status is, so that they can refer back to that the next time they are going to submit an expense report, and can see their full history in the system.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I do have a question I'm going to bring to you guys at the end, but I want to hear from Doug really quick before we circle back around to that. Hi, Doug.
Hello. And thank you again for inviting me to the webinar. It's great to hear everybody's conversation, and looking forward to continuing here. Again, my name is Doug Hinesley. I am the senior partner here at Card Integrity, and I welcome, by all means, our contact details are right here with the QR code. Please reach out and let me know if you have any questions. But just a little bit about Card Integrity, how other schools sort of also use us, or whether other components that are out there. We really look at the expenses as more than just what went wrong. There's also what went right. There's the patterns. There's a whole training. It's the whole P2P type space. That's what we try to look at. So we really look at it from once we identify some potential misuse, as Danae already went through, we do want to wrap it around sort of a nice package and be able to get back and communicate directly with the cardholder to help train them as well on how to stop it or what they should have done differently in the future. If they accidentally miscoded something, right? They may have put alcohol as entertainment or things like that. We can take a look at that and identify this misclassification and either get back directly to the employee or get back to the actual the accounts payable staff for recoding, all the way through the whole process, and also looking at the invoices from accounts payable to see if vendors are actually getting double paid as well through the P-card/AP process. And these are just some of the facets that a lot of our higher education schools that we work with use. And it's really, again, designed for the entire P2P space, but really supports primarily the purchasing and the finance and travel teams that are really going through and doing the bulk of the monitoring. But then we also support the other aspects of the departments, from separating out reports by department so each department can see their own, to purchasing people, to audit support, et cetera. And it just keeps going on from there. Because it's really a full understanding of your spend is really the key thing that we like to look at. But it's been a pleasure working with everybody at University of Virginia and lots of other higher ed customers. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Doug. Much appreciated. So one of the questions that came into the chat is around how well both AppZen and/or card integrity detect transactions that are incorrectly coded. For example, alcohol coded as supplies rather than entertainment. I'm going to have you guys speak to that. And while you're speaking to that, if you wouldn't mind, we have Amanda supporting us with SCTEM here in the background, and we'd love to bring up a poll for the audience that talks to us about how you are auditing your transactions. Approximately what percentage of your expense reports are being reviewed by a human being. And so in the interim, Ashley, would you talk to us about, catching those incorrectly coded transactions, alcohol, not as entertainment, but as supplies, or maybe not alcohol, depending on what you're capturing it as?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm reading this. So ours looks for keywords, so it doesn't necessarily audit against account codes. It audits for keywords. So it's whatever words we have set up, like Jack for Jack Daniels, things like that. So that's what our AppZen is looking for, is those keywords, not account codes. So
On the receipt itself, correct?
right.
The receipt image, that's where it's diving and digging into.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do they come to you with kind of a set list of some of those alcohol related terms, or do you create them all from scratch when you?
Jordan,
Okay.
you might can help with that because I wasn't here with the implementation.
Yeah, happy to step in here. Thank you for that. It's a great question. So we can help in a number of ways. Like Ashley mentioned, we have a keyword search. So if there's any specific words, we can add that to a list. And if any pops up on an expense report, once it's submitted, it'll automatically be flagged for manual review. We also have a couple of specific audit models designed just for alcohol as well. So we have an app that is called Alcohol Check for Grants. So it's more, it's looking at the accounting code. And we also can develop models that also calculate the percentage of alcohol in proportion to the total amount on the bill. So there's multiple ways that we can sort of look at alcohol or various other scenarios in the context of expenses. Really depends on what your school is looking to do. But yeah, we have a number of models and audit checks that are specifically geared towards this because, whether it's HCP or alcohol, these are obviously, top of mind for a lot of collegiate audit staff.
Thanks. Great to understand more about it. How about you, Danae? How's the world of alcohol being miscoded or coded correctly managed?
So I think similarly, we're not flagging, targeting our flagging based on whether they use the correct expense code. However, I will say that may be happening in the background to help identify some of these transactions. But we do frequently see when a lot of these transactions are identified, if they're under a potentially personal transaction, some of the split transactions, some of the other ones that are identified as the divergent transactions, they may be miscoded. So I think there's a lot of overlap there. It brings a lot of those to light where there is confusion from the departmental side. They may not have understood how to specifically code something. And that comes to the forefront in some of those. So we're able to have that conversation to address multiple points and just best practices for how to expense things correctly, including which expense code to use. And Doug, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit on, but you're right. As far as when we go through looking for expenses, the divergent versus common, we'll certainly identify the unique ones that people are not doing to bring those up, or if they're an unusual purchase. But to the actual coding, we have an entire module dedicated to that. So for those organizations that want to look to make sure the right coding was done or the right types of materials or services or products being put to the right GL account structures, we do that all the time for some of our customers. We just So no problem from our perspective. And we have to have a little bit of understanding as far as what these GL account codes are, right? We work with some people that have 200, we work with some people that have 2000. So it's a little bit more complicated at the 2000 level, but we make those things work to make sure we can identify it.
Thank you so much, Doug. All right, so answers to the poll. Thought it might be interesting for the audience to see this summary. So it's still high out there in the world of higher ed as we know it to be, right? Percent of expense, and then it declines, pretty rapidly, 16%, 12%, that 80 and 60%, and then 6% of you are less than 40. So still a lot of manually auditing things. I think both of these methodologies help to create more of a strategic audit, is what we like to call it, right? Not just kind of throwing our resources at every possible thing that comes through, but rather than that, focusing on targeted areas where we see some real bang for our buck and the time that we invest in that activity. Got a question from Lacey Johnson. Hi, Lacey. Does AppZen audit an expense report for compliance with policy or just specific keywords or expenses? Jordan, do you want to jump in on that? It's my understanding that there's a plethora of apps that AppZen can apply that can create really robust AI auditing across a whole range of things.
Yeah, you're spot on. Great question. So when you move forward with AppZen, during the implementation process, we'll sit down with your team and we'll actually set up and configure the solution based on your organization's specific policies. Whether you have specific policies by business group or user types, we're very flexible. We can map out to what you want. But in addition to that, we also have 17 audit models that come out of the gate with additional apps and AI agents that are available on top of that. So think of them like multiple levels of protection. So it's really a combination of the two, right? We're going to load your policies and we're going to always map to that. And in addition, there's keyword searches, there's audit models, there's AI agents. So again, it's just about kind of putting together multiple layers of defense for your overall audit program. So great question. If you're interested, happy to go more into depth.
Yeah, and when I've heard you guys' terminology in the past, you speak of apps or AI agents, and at least in my mind, what that equates to is programmatically, right? When whatever's coming into that AppZen queue gets hit by, as you said, all these different layers of potential ways of looking at something.
Yeah, that's correct. So as each individual expense report comes in, we're going to look not just at the report level, but each individual line item, and we're going to assign risk. So low, medium, or high. And only high risk is actually going to be flagged for your manual audit review. So yeah, it's a combination of the two. The goal is to make the whole audit process as autonomous as possible. And the way that we've been able to effectively do that is, again, tying it back to your organization's policies and having a multitude of audit checks that kind of take into account, the various compliance rules that your organization may need.
Thank you. Danae, I had a question for you that I was curious about. Do you have an estimate of kind of like how much time it takes for that? We've sent off a month's worth of data. We're getting, response back on the analytics of that from Card Integrity. What level of investment and time does your staff have in looking at those results and addressing them?
Yeah, so that's something we've been working on adjusting, and with the new ability to identify transactions as common or divergent, we've been working on reducing that time. So it stretches out. It's overall probably a few hours at most, but the process will be stretched out over a couple of weeks because we have multiple people on our team who are both helping to do those reviews, and then we do have to do a little bit of outreach to the specific employees, and then we give them, an allotted time to respond back to us before we decide if it is a transaction that's potentially in violation of a policy. So overall, the whole process takes us like 2 to 3 weeks, but in total time dedicated is likely maybe 2 to 3 hours. So we are able to complete it in a pretty compact time frame because we are really targeting specific transactions to review. So that's really helpful. And the common versus divergent transactions, again, has been helpful to help us filter down to really look at those ones that are going to be the most impactful, that are most likely to be transactions that are not, or ones that are most likely to be in violation, if that makes sense.
It does. All right, we are coming close to time here. In thinking about how card integrity works, Doug, it doesn't seem to me that it's tied to a specific tool or bank, or it's just, can you get the output? Can you get the data output for you to analyze? Is that a true statement? That there's no limitation of tool or where this can be applied, right? This can be applied to anything.
Correct, right. We sort of are referred to as we're sort of tool agnostic, right? So any bank, any expense reporting system that's currently being used, right? We don't ask people to change. We can integrate directly with those, and we're sort of up and running in 10 business days as our turnaround time from the time we get access. So it becomes a very quick implementation. And again, it's not tied to any one particular suite or bank or expense reporting. And we have a lot of people that change banks or change expense reporting while they're working with us, right? Just the nature of the beast. And because we keep the trends and patterns going, we keep the pattern of that individual going across systems too, which becomes very helpful. So they can't sort of hide and lose all history from the previous systems.
Great. Thank you for that. And Jordan, I'm going to punch a similar question to you with a little bit differences. So one of the key differences that you guys as an audience can tell about these two tools is AppZen really, I know there's an after-fact audit capability, but it is predominantly able to be inserted into a technology's workflow, right? After that user submits, before approvers have to look at things or whatever, and being able to kind of stop and halt right there. Card integrity is happening once all of the things have come through, but also gives us a very robust way to address issues with compliance. So, Jordan, since you're in the workflow, in higher ed, we kind of have a lot overall, but there's kind of 4 big players right now that we would identify in terms of tools: Concur, Oracle, Workday, Chrome River, and Burst, as they are now referred to. We could go into Banner, PeopleSoft, et cetera. But I'm curious, what tools have you been able to truly integrate into that workflow process with so far?
Yeah, great question. So we're similar to card integrity. We're ERP or EMS agnostic. So we integrate with all the best in breed today, whether it's Concur, to Oracle, to Workday, to Coupa, to Burst, Chrome River. We can seamlessly integrate with all those platforms, and basically act as sort of an intelligent layer on top of those systems to make the overall amount of audit work less and less. So yeah, in short, we integrate with all the best in practice. Just like right now, University of Alabama, they're kind of in the process of revamping their ERP. Again, not a problem from our side, although they're gonna, it seems like Concur is gonna stay in place. But yeah, we integrate with all the best in breed. No issues there.
Great. All right, that's what we've got for you guys today. We thank you so much for joining us. We hope you got some useful information out of today's session, and we cannot wait to see all of you who can make it at our annual SCTEM conference in Dallas, Texas, September 21st through the 24th. Always one of my favorite conferences of the year, where we get to really engage with each other and dive into the world of T&E. So thank you so much. Appreciate you joining.